Hello and welcome to Drive and Double Feature Podcast. I'm Nathan.
I'm Ryan.
And this is the podcast where we talk about 2 movies a week every Tuesday and Thursday. But before we get into today's movie, just want to thank all the patrons out there that support the channel. And if you want to help support the channel, you can actually head on over to patreon.com/driveindoublefeaturepodcast. You can get a bunch of bonus episodes just for $5 a month, and you'll help out the show. But getting into today's movie, we are talking about He Ran All the Way from 1951, a film noir starring John Garfield and directed by John Barry. It also has Shelley Winters in it. This is a unique, very small film noir movie, black and white. I just picked it because it looked cool and it was available to stream. And we haven't done a noir film in a lot. And if you know, just from me talking on the show, I really love noir-themed movies. So I don't know. It was a blind watch. It's one of those where I didn't know like hardly anything about this.
Oh yeah, I actually really liked it a lot.
Oh yeah, it was good. Yeah,
and because I kind of went in with zero expectations. I was like, this could be boring. I don't know, but
yeah,
but it ended up being really exciting. John Garfield is really, really good in this, and Shelley Winters also does a great job in this too.
Yeah.
Just this whole movie is just tense throughout the entire way through.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? It's I think the whole situation is tense. So it is a home invasion movie. So it's kind of a plot we've seen before. It's kind of like a thug who's on the run from the law, and he takes over a home and he basically kidnaps everybody in it. But the lead up to it is really good. I don't know what it is. John Garfield living with his mom, yelling in his dreams. He has the look, and I don't know how to explain it, but it's the look. He looks hardened. He looks like he's dealt with a lot of stuff. He does an excellent job, like throughout this whole movie.
I was doing a little bit of research, and his mom was only 13 years older than him at the time of this. But it's really like the relationship that they have is great, because you could tell he's kind of used to putting up with his mom's abuse. Because there's a scene where he kind of back talks her, and she smacks him in the face, and he just says, "You're losing your punch, Mom."
Yeah, I love that. So it's kind of like a down and out guy, right? Like the world has like handed him like garbage, and he's kind of forced in his circumstances, and it's normal New York stuff. I feel like every day in New York, at least once you have to go rob a guy for money, right? Is that just a common occurrence there?
I mean that happens every day, right?
But no, I really, one thing that really stands out to me in this movie is the cinematography. Straight from the beginning, this movie is beautiful, like black and white photography, and everything is framed. Like every shot, like there's a scene where he's looking near the beginning of the movie, he's looking through a ladder, and like the ladder steps perfectly frame his face and everything. Beautiful movie.
I really enjoyed the cinematography too. So this movie is 70 years old at this point. And it's crazy because whoever restored this movie, they put in some serious work. It looks very, very clean.
Yes. And it probably the best it's ever looked, honestly.
Yeah. I don't know how much better they could get it to look, but they one of the scenes I really liked a lot, it was it's him kind of plotting this robbery with his partner in crime, but it ends up getting botched, and his partner ends up getting shot, and the John Garfield is on the run, and there's just a really long sequence of him just like going into like a public pool, and and it's just him just being like looking over his shoulders. There's these like really interesting shots where it does like this overhead shot of him going into a changing stall, and he's real cagey because he goes and sits on a bench, and some other guy sits on his briefcase, and he freaks out. And the
Mhm.
guy's like, and the other guy looks at him and says, like, what are you doing? Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And he goes into the changing room, and another guy tries to go in at the same time. He just like frantically closes the door like to keep the guy out.
Yes, yeah. It's so tense, and I think that's where it comes from. Is this guy? He thinks everybody's out to get him, I guess. Like, no matter what, this is one of the most paranoid movies. This man is freaking out. I love it when a little bit later he actually gets in the pool, because the whole idea, he's told, blend in. That's how you're going to hide from the cops. And so he's in the water, he's looking around, he sees a cop, and so he decides, okay, I'm gonna dive underwater. So he dives under the water to hide for a little bit, and once again looks great. But yeah, that's what you talked about. This movie's tense throughout. It's like this paranoid feeling throughout. Because you feel bad for the guy, of course. He's not a good person, but you do
No.
end up feeling bad for the dude. You don't want him to get caught, which is a good, like, sign of a good movie. Makes you care about kind of a down and out person.
Yeah, I mean, they establish very quickly he's not a nice guy, because when he goes into the public pool. That's where he meets Shelley Winters.
Yes.
And at first, he tries to act real flirtatious because she's
Hmm.
trying to learn how to swim. And he's giving her swimming lessons, and
Hmm.
then at first she's like, "Okay, I'm gonna go," and then he just grabs her and she's like, "Hey, you're hurting me. Like, I want to leave." And he's like, "Well, if you want to leave, get out of here," type of thing. And then,
Yeah.
but he tries to follow her into the women's changing room too, and all
Yeah.
that.
I do not understand what Shelley Winters saw in this man, other than the fact that she was lonely. Like, he grabs her arm so violently in the pool. I was like, God. And I mean, it's just the common trait with Shelley Winters, because I was thinking about this. She picks the wrong man in Night of the Hunter, and she picks the wrong man in Lolita as well. She was typecast as a woman who picks the wrong man her multiple times in her career. So it's part of the role. I feel like you just know what you're gonna get with Shelley
Y-
Winters.
Yeah, if she didn't pick the wrong man in Poseidon Adventure, she would have lived.
You're absolutely right. You're
Yeah, I mean, who would choose Jack Albertson as a husband?
Ew, what the heck? The guy who
Grandpa
won't get
Joe.
out of bed?
Yeah, Grandpa Joe. Gross.
Yeah, I totally get it. That movie I watched it not long ago. It threw me off seeing Grandpa Joe walking around. Uh,
You're like
but
lazy jerk.
and you know what? Shelley Winters is great in that movie. Just
She
like,
got she got nominated for that movie.
yeah, she did, and she's good here too. I mean, Shelley Winters always puts in a good performance, I feel like.
This is going off. Did you see her Oscar-winning performances either in Diary of Anne Frank or Patch of Blue?
I've never seen either. No.
No, yeah, I've seen both of those. She was really good in those too.
Oh, I bet. No, she's just got she's got a good personality, I feel like. And here she plays kind of a lonely girl. Like, I guess I was complaining, like, why would she take him home? But you kind of get that sense that, she still lives with her parents, and she just really doesn't have much going for her.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering that too, because I mean, any other human being, if you met somebody at a public pool and they did that to you, you just like, get the hell away from me. I don't
No.
ever want to see you again. And
Yeah.
but immediately after that, he's like, "Oh, why don't I walk you home?" And then she's like, "All right, I guess so." And
Yeah.
that makes the biggest mistake of her life
Yeah,
doing that.
the worst mistake of her life. Like, could you imagine the trauma that you'd have to deal with after this whole fiasco of getting, like, kidnapped in your own home?
Yeah,
Uh,
knowing that it was her fault that she put her whole family through that.
yeah.
But they do kind of explain that, because there is a later scene where her friend tries to set her up on a date with another guy, and
Mhm.
she's like, she says, "I don't know, I'm not interested," mainly because she's trying to wants to go home to be with her family as they're being held captive. But
Mhm.
her friend says, "Well, if you keep turning other guys down like that, you're just going to end up alone for the rest of your life if you don't ever take a chance." And then she's like, "Oh, you think I should take a chance?" And she takes that as a completely wrong way, thinking
Yeah.
that she should take a chance on this insane individual.
Yeah, this
But
crazy guy.
but instead of finding like an actual normal guy, but I think it was kind of implying that she was pretty desperate at that point to find a suitor. And once she did, she was like, well, if I don't do it now, then, what other chances are going to be?
But yeah, so all of this leads up. He walks her home. They get home, and things go a little awry. It's funny. He meets the family and everything. He meets the kid, the mom, the dad, and they're nice people too. They're like, "Oh yeah, it's nice to meet you." They're a little off-putting, but I was really surprised for a movie from 1951 how supportive they were. That Shelley Winters is bringing another man into their home and then going to be there alone with him.
No, that's the only part I was finding to be a little unbelievable, where she just brings this. Well, she allows this guy enter her home, and she just met him not even an hour ago.
Yeah.
And then her family is like, "Oh, who's this guy?" He's like, "Oh, I met him today." And they're like, "Oh, okay, well, let's just leave you alone with this stranger you just met like an hour ago. Have fun."
Yeah, exactly. I don't get it. But hey, it is what it is. I mean, that's the setup for like the great parts of the movie, and that is whenever things get out of control and John Garfield holds them captive. And I think this movie is a solid 80 minutes long, 78 minutes long even. So I feel like the one setting type drama to this, it could have gotten a little tired after a bit, but I think it's the perfect length for what they were going for with this movie. Go ahead.
No, I totally agree. I think anymore it could have been a little too much, but they I mean, John Garfield's character, he pretty much is in almost every scene.
Yeah, it's his
together.
movie.
So, but I think at a certain point you'd be like, what are they going to do about this guy? They're just going to live in this house forever, type of thing. So
yeah, you got to think about like what are they going to do, and like the various plots and things that they have to try to do. And I mean, John Garfield, he tries to be nice. I'm going to put nice in quotations. He has a gun the whole time, but he's like, all I'm trying to do is just to treat you like human beings, and you treat me like garbage. And it's like, well, you're holding them hostage.
I know he gets so mad. He treats this family like they're ungrateful because he hasn't decided to murder them at one point. It's a great moment though, because he's super paranoid that the cops are out looking for him. And there's an article in the paper about the robbery, and he when he goes and talks to the father of the family, he's like, "Don't you know it? It's me. I'm Mark Roby. I'm from the guy from the heist." And he's like, "Who?" And he's like, "The guy from the heist. I was there." He's like, "I read that article 1,000 times. You weren't mentioned once in there." So then he's like, "Well, now I have to stay because I told you my name."
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God, that killed me. That whole scene, because isn't it like they try their best to hide the newspaper, and like the dad's hiding it behind their back, and then the kid's like, the kid's like, "Yeah, we got the newspaper today." After the dad was like, "No, there's no newspaper. It's not here." It was killer, one of those moments, because it's supposed to be a night thing. It's supposed to be like, I'm staying here for the night. I'm gonna go home tomorrow. But then,
well, he was even about to leave, and I was like, "All right, I'm gonna get my coffee and get out of here." And then he saw the paper, and it's like, "Well, guess I'm staying longer now."
Yeah, exactly. But I love that the family here, the mom doesn't take anything, but even the dad tries to stand up to it. And this is way later in the movie, but I just love the scene of them because our main character, he buys everybody dinner. He buys like a giant turkey. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's my favorite scene in the whole movie.
Great scene, right? Like he buys the family this huge dinner, but the dad decides, hey, I'm gonna stand up this time, and the mom just serves stew that they cooked. So they're eating stew in front of him, and that just makes him stew in his seat. He's so angry.
Nathan, you're so clever.
I know. I'm just as good as the writer of this movie, Dalton Trumbo.
Except you're not a communist.
I'm not a communist. Don't tell anyone otherwise.
well, I don't know what you do outside of this podcast, but anyway,
Yeah.
it's a great moment because he buys, like you said, he buys all this food.
Mm-hmm.
She starts serving stew, and they're all eating. The family's eating it, and he even tries to get the little kids like eat the turkey. Come on, and the kid goes like, I don't want that. I like stew. And uh,
Mm-hmm.
the dad kind of makes this speech, and he said, "There's certain things you can't make people do, and
Mm-hmm.
you like we drew a line, and we're not crossing it no matter what." He said, "Well, what if I just shoot you?" So you're not gonna do that, and then he just
Mm-hmm.
fires the gun like a crazy guy, like
Yeah.
in the middle of the apartment, and then he's like, "All right, well, I guess we're eating turkey now."
Yeah. See, that's what's so great about that moment, because you really do think that, like, in some part of John Garfield, that he does care about the family and he wouldn't get driven to that point. But when he shoots that gun, you realize, oh, anything can happen now. Anybody could die from now on. He literally does not care. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
No.
he he does get to like a certain paranoia point where he just becomes totally crazed.
Yeah.
Because there's a Shelley Winters character, like going back to that one scene with with her girlfriends. She kind of makes the decision like, okay, I'm going to devote myself to this man,
Hmm.
and they both kind of agree. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to give you the money I stole, and you're going to go out and buy me a car.
Yeah.
And he tells her, and she goes out, and but she's gone for like a really long time,
Hmm.
and he starts getting real antsy.
Yes.
And
It's like bad.
the mother and son, he lets them leave. He just says one family member has to stay in the house at all times, so he does let
Yeah.
other people in the family come and go. And they go to church, and there's a very tense scene between the father and
Yes.
John Garfield's character, where he's building a ship, and he's just telling him, like, he's taunting the guy, being like, hey, you realize I'm going to take your daughter with me, and we're going to go live our life together.
Yeah.
And they get into this huge fight.
Yeah, like, they tumble in the hallways and everything. It was a lot more, dynamic than I thought it would be. No, there's a lot of great moments like that, especially just one-on-one. Another weird thing? Uh, I think this is just a time period thing. It's speaking of people leaving, this little boy bought alcohol. Well, he was allowed to pay for the alcohol, but couldn't take it home to people. Uh, I don't know, weird rules back in the day.
Well, yeah, I guess they allowed delivery back then because they do show up with the liquor
That's true.
later.
That's true. Also, really quickly, that dad. Do you know who that dad is?
Mm, Wallace Ford.
Yeah, Wallace Ford, who is he was in Freaks. He played the clown Frozo in Freaks.
Oh,
Yeah, so there's a little. Well, actually, we didn't cover Freaks on Drive and Double Feature. That was our old podcast, but yeah. So there's a neat little connection, I guess.
we have these weird actors, just him, Harry Holcomb. They just pop up all the time.
Yeah, I guess so, and I'm sure we'll see more of them. I definitely Shelley Winters. I don't think she's gonna go away. She did some crazy movies late in her life.
Yeah, hopefully we'll do one of those.
Yeah.
Uh, but the finale
Yes.
is very great scene as well, where
Yeah.
she gets home, and she's at, like, he's like, where were you? And she said, well, I was out buying the car, and it's going to take a while. They have to fix the headlights.
Hmm.
And we as an audience don't know, so we're kind of like in this paranoid state with this man, because
Yeah.
we don't know if she actually went to the cops or not, because he's thinking she
Yeah.
went to the cops, and we don't know for
Well,
sure.
we're questioning where her loyalties lie, right? Me personally, I never knew what she was going to do. Did she really want to leave with him? Was she just using him to, like, get him out? It's weird. So it leads to, like, just this really tense thing. And he just keeps looking out the window, looking for the car. He's like, where's the car? Where's the car? And she's like, it's getting delivered. And then he just does not believe it. He thinks cops are watching, and you don't see any cops, right? So that it's just paranoia talking to a certain extent.
Well, yeah, because there's one scene where they're waiting, and he hears a cop car coming.
Hmm.
He's like, I knew it. They were coming. They're coming right now. and she's like, "No, I swear." And then he's about to shoot her, and then the cop car keeps driving, and he's just like, "Oh." And then that's when she kind of realizes that this man does not love me like how I think he does.
Yeah, exactly. So I think a lot changes there. And it's and I mean, just this moment, the ending, the whole ending of this movie, I think it's where this movie changed for me from like a movie that I liked. Like liked it. I thought it was a good movie to a movie I like actually loved, and I do want to watch again and really like go through it again because like it's awesome because they end up going downstairs, him and Shelley Winters, and just their exchange in the last like maybe the last 5 minutes of this movie, I think is great. I think it's great because the dad shows up, right? And he's like holding him at, well, not at gunpoint, but has a gun pointed at him through a door window. And so Shelley Winters and John Garfield are split on either side of the door. And just this whole scene of like they can't move because the dad's just gonna shoot anything he sees that moves in front of the door. He's like, "You can't do this." Very public, very a public affair. And no, not many people show up to this whole situation.
Well, they do at the end of the
At the
confrontation.
end, but not during the firing. I guess
No,
for good
yeah,
reason.
not when people are actively shooting rounds. But yeah, it's a great moment. She gets the gun and she does end up shooting John Garfield's character, and then as he's dying in the street, the car shows up finally.
I know, I hate that because the car, she did get the car, and then his final dying moments is like, oh, the car, and he tries to get over to it, but he dies along the way. I don't know. Oh wait, that's a huge spoiler, but it is a great ending. I think it's a very solid ending.
Yeah, I mean, it's a 70-year-old movie, so if you knew what you're getting into when you listened, but
That's true. That's true.
um,
Uh,
yeah, just no. I mean, I had never heard of this before you brought it up to me,
no.
really, and again, this is one of those hidden gem type of movies where
Mhm.
it's like this movie's really great, but I think there might be somewhat of a reason, but that has to do with a lot of
Yeah.
backstage drama or whatever you want to call it, like political
Mhm.
type of stuff. Because, like you had said, this movie was written by Dalton Trumbo,
Mhm.
and his name wasn't even officially on the credits because
Yeah.
at the time he was arrested for communism, and he had to use a front, so like a guy that had to pretend to be Dalton Trumbo, and
Yeah.
uh, at the same. So while this movie was being played, like he was in prison or like getting out of prison, and then the director of this movie, John Barry, and the guy that was authoring Dalton Trumbo's script, they also went to jail as communist sympathizers.
Yeah, yeah. What a horrible time in Hollywood history, during they call it the Red Scare, right?
Mhm.
I know they had the House Committee of Un-American Activities, and that was its whole thing, and it could kill a movie like this. I think you're right. I think this movie would actually be a well-loved like piece of like 50s movies if it had a bigger like appeal, because I'm sure just having communist ties killed any momentum that it could have, because even the star John Garfield, he was in a whole debacle for being a communist in quotes.
And this was his last film too.
Yeah, they say that he died due to stress from the communist, like the whole thing around that. So yeah, this is his last role, and that kills me because watching this movie, I would love to see more roles from him because I think this character is just, it's really dynamic, really dark, brooding, and I love it. He plays, I hate to say it, but he plays dumb really well. He plays a dumb thug really well, and I don't know. It sucks that that had to happen.
Yeah, he's just a hothead
Yeah,
guy who just he shoots and asks questions later type. So
yeah,
it's he gives a great performance in here, and it's a shame he really didn't really have like a long career
yeah,
after this.
yeah, exactly. But do I recommend this movie? Yes, I think it does. I think it deserves its due. A little error I want to fix. It is not on Criterion Channel streaming anymore, but the whole thing is for free on YouTube, so it's an easy watch.
Oh yeah, and it's in full HD on YouTube too.
Yeah.
Actually, there is one last weird thing, Nathan, about this
Oh,
movie.
okay. What's that?
So the guy name is John Garfield, and I actually watched this movie on Monday. So that means I didn't like it.
Oh, this one sucks. Yeah. Well, do you think having lasagna would have helped a Monday? Like, does that help Mondays?
Yeah, I think if I had lasagna, I would have liked this movie better.
Okay, makes sense. Makes sense.
But no, in all seriousness, I did like this movie a lot, as I said, and I would give it a recommend.
Yeah. So I think that does wrap it up for He Ran All the Way. But Ryan, what are we talking about on Thursday?
Well, what are two things that come to mind right now if I ask you to think of two things?
Uh, Garfield, of course, and Ring Pops.
Well,
Yeah.
you're close. Garfield, he's got a giant personality, and ring pops can be considered toys. So we're talking about giants and toys, which is
Okay.
on
Okay.
the Arrow player if you have that streaming service, or if you got the Blu-ray, you can watch that too. But we'll try to fill you in as much as possible if you can't find it.
Well, I'm excited to watch that. But if you have anything you want to send over to us, you can email us at driveindoublefeaturepodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And also, you can follow us over at Twitter at DIDFpod. But until next time.
Until next time.